Yep.
Okay. So here we are, James. Middle of season one. They said it'd never last. Um, we've made four episodes now, and we did it without having any idea. Really, I don't think anyone would be under any illusions that we had any idea what
No,
we were doing.
no.
Um, and I don't know about you, but I've had some pretty good feedback. And what we wanted to do today is very quickly take stock of what we set out to do in the first instance, why we're doing this podcast in the first place. Where did we get to? How close did we get to hitting that target? And what we're going to try and do in the next couple of episodes before we wrap up season one.
Yep.
So, I mean, broadly, how did you think we did, James? Where did we get to?
Yeah, I had similar feedback. It was mostly positive for the people that listened to it. The biggest criticism I had, which I wasn't expecting because I kind of already knew that it wasn't where it needs to be, and that was the quality of the production and
Yeah.
the cutting of how I put the episodes together. And I think that came back to just how we recorded the episodes, and we chopped and we changed and you know, I think it got a little bit better as we went on, but that's something that I think we will get better at. But hopefully the content, which is what we set out to do as best we could, hit the mark with most people. And yeah, most people I spoke to found the episodes really interesting. And it's not like our guests were world
Mega
famous
stars.
people.
Mm.
Yeah, they were just people with a story and interesting stories too, like which most people I think can probably relate to. And the feedback was it was great.
Mm.
Probably, hopefully we get more feedback as we get more people tuning in, and more
So,
guests.
so as you can probably tell from this episode, one of the things we learned was to try not to read anything on the podcast while we were doing it. So this episode is intentionally, completely and
Yeah,
utterly extemporaneous. So we've probably got higher production technology this time around. I know the laptop that I recorded the first four episodes actually, on last year was from 2017, I think. And now I have this super pimped, you can't spend any more money on it MacBook Pro, which I'm very happy to be using. So hopefully that comes through in some of the output. But let's in all seriousness, let's just go back a step. What we set out to do, I think, with this was to try and get some people to tell their stories about the boundary conditions in their careers. And as I found out last year, and I know plenty of people that I know have also found out, you're presented often, every now and again through your career, you're presented with these moments where you have to make some decisions about what you want to do next. And so as a software engineer, you kind of have this almost inherent or inbuilt inflection point in your career when you move from individual contributor into management, and then from management into leadership. And what James and I set out to do with this was sit down and ask that question: what should you do next when you hit these boundary conditions? And so the four people we spoke to, we had Carlton in episode one, with his experiences in international career and at Microsoft, and actually interestingly going back to IC after going to management and leadership and doing that jump the other way, which is a bit unusual. I really enjoyed our chat with Michael Smith from Sagittal. We spoke about frameworks and how to manage complexity. We got some great insights from Danielle in episode three on how engineers can work with VCs and private equity firms, which I found super interesting. And then we had at the end there we had Swapnali with quality, and also she had some fantastically useful insights, I think, as a woman in tech and as a female leader in tech, which really resonated with the audience. So that's what we did first time round. I think second time round, in the next three or four episodes that we do in the second half of the series, we're going to try and do the same thing. We're going to try and tell stories, and we're going to try and get people with interesting stories to tell and get them to talk about boundary conditions. We're going to change the format a little bit. I think we're going to be a bit more structured. We're a little bit ad hoc with our format in the first couple of episodes, so we'll be adding a little bit of structure, not too much, a little bit, just to keep it on track. And then I think we really just hope to repeat the stories and get some people that will have interesting stories to tell. As James said, not necessarily famous people, but people who are doing things that hopefully the kind of things that our audience are doing, and experiencing the kind of things that our audience is experiencing, and wondering, and perhaps having gone through those boundary conditions and made those decisions and can reflect on them in a considered way. That's
Yep.
that's our plan for part two. James, thoughts?
Yes, I like all the sound of that. No, obviously, we've spoken about this, and I think a little bit of structure. It's not like we didn't have structure, but I think starting off how we're thinking about doing it for the next part of this season is going to set the episodes up quite nicely. Um, so I mean, looking forward to that. I think it'll help us as well. It might make the flow of the episodes a little bit nicer as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about topics, like a couple of topics that really spring to mind. I want to have a look at the effect of Gen AI on the role of software engineering. What does it mean to be a software engineer under the influence of generative AI, particularly the coding stuff? There is an awful lot of nonsense going around about, on the one hand, not needing programmers anymore. On the other hand, and there's some equal nonsense, I would say, coming from the other side, saying that this technology is never going to be any use for software, right? And I think that the truth's somewhere in the middle of those two things.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a bit of a think about the broader implications of some of these AI technologies on the workforce, not just software engineering. Like, what does it do to things like apprenticeship, and what's the role of juniors versus seniors versus leaders, managers and leaders in this new AI powered workforce? And I think we're going to continue to have a diverse set of voices that we seek out and speak to. We did a pretty good job with that, I think, in the first half. We'll continue to do that. And then I guess beyond that, I'll get your thoughts, James, about content you want to talk about. But beyond that, we're looking for people to who might want to come and have a chat with us, given
Yep.
those given those rails that we've mentioned we want to run within. Reach out to us. Let's have a chat, and we'll see if we can slot you in for a quick chat.
Yes, I think a lot of what you said there is sort of mirrors what I'm thinking. I think when we started planning this podcast series, it was kind of like the fork in the road for a software engineer. You know, do I go down the management or do I head down the sort of principal path? And it was like these two distinct paths that obviously there's some crossover and there's different ways you can go as a software engineer. But I feel like in the time that we had that initial conversation to now, what I feel software engineers do really want to know is, well, put that aside, management or IC, like what as a software engineer should I be focused on just to keep myself relevant and make sure that I'm going to be in demand, because I think software engineers are going to be in demand. Like there's no doubt about it, but certain software engineers may not be as in demand as other certain software engineers. So I think it's almost finding the areas that engineers are going to be really valuable. And those areas are probably going to still have that component of still like an IC or a manager or whatever, but it's like, is it the domain or the types of products or the types of companies that these engineers should be looking at? So I think uncovering some of that, like obviously when we can't go back in time and speak to engineers that have done it because this is all new. So maybe that can be part of the conversation with these guests is like, where do you see the future of software engineering? And we haven't discussed that as a question, but maybe that's something that we do ask each guest, because I reckon a lot of engineers would love to know the answer to that at the moment.
Well, I tell you what, there's a great quote from Horace Dediu, which I love. I use it in all my presentations, and it says, "Those people who predict the future we call futurists, and those people who know when the future will happen we call billionaires."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so on that note, I think one of the themes for part two is where are the new billionaires? What do they look like? Are they single person startups, single person unicorn? With a complete stack of Gen AI software underneath them, or is it something a bit different, right? Is there, as I feel, there's a bit of a hint to my views on this. I actually think that rather than getting rid of people, what we'll actually end up doing is that the human element, the verifiably human element of a lot of things, is going to become far more important in the future.
Mm.
And I can see that starting to happen in recruiting, with the just the dross of AI generated material that's filling up inboxes in the recruiting space. There's been some
Mm.
rather amusing examples. Just today, I saw one of a guy who was doing an interview, and he had to stop it because the guy he was interviewing was literally using GPT to answer the questions as he was as he was being interviewed. So I think this somewhat ironically, this human element of the future will be very interesting, and I want to chat to a few people and get their opinions on that as well.
Yep, yep, I see that, and the type of roles that I recruit. So I recruit within sort of earlier stage startups, and I've found that one of the biggest hurdles, or one of the hardest things to find is at the moment is engineers who are, without a doubt, good engineers. That has to be there, but it's the communication side. So it's like understanding why they're doing things, understanding the customer, from a really like user experience angle, as opposed to just, you can't just be a good software engineer anymore. I think, I guess being a good software engineer is becoming more than just you can code well, and you can find your place. Whereas now I think it is becoming harder for those engineers that perhaps don't have a few skills outside just the coding.
Do you want to know something? I actually think that being a good software engineer has always been more than about software, right? And I think this current transition software has always been about these transitions and the eras, but this particular one we're going through, I think you end up actually distilling out those human qualities, or the ability to be human, and it ends up being more important than it's ever been. Before we go, I just wanted to call out specifically Kenneth Eco, who very graciously reached out to us after one of the episodes and gave us a whole bunch of free feedback and technical production tips and stuff that hopefully we're putting into practice in part two. And he's don't have his website in front of me. We will put the website in the show notes, Kenneth's website in the show notes, because he's got a lot of tips about brand and so on. I just wanted to say thanks to him for doing that for us.
Yes, that's a good idea. That was fascinating, actually. It's amazing how, just a little bit of knowledge, in his case it was quite a lot, but
Yeah.
can really make you think how you do things. In fact, I think we've even changed the software that we're using to help
Yeah.
produce the episodes. So fingers crossed, this is slightly better or easier, at least for us, to edit and get it.
And
out
if it
to,
doesn't,
to...
it's obviously just not our fault, and we're rubbish, and we should throw the towel in.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the hardest things is like, it's actually just creating something that people want to listen to, and I think we need to keep listening to anyone that gives us feedback,
absolutely,
and take it on board, because it's all been helpful.
I got an email the other day just on that point. I got an email, so we can. I mean, I'm not one to pat us off on the back, but I got an email from someone the other day congratulating us on getting to 4 episodes. This was a podcast person trying to sell me something. Fair enough. But their email said that the vast majority, almost all podcasts, do not get past their first episode. So we're 400%, or with this episode, we're 500% better than average. So
yeah. And having done it now, it doesn't surprise me, because if you think about the first episode, which we didn't really officially release, you can go and find it if you want.
It's
don't get
terrible.
too excited.
I would advise you not to do it unless you really went into self-torture.
But yeah, it took so much time to get, and so much planning, which I wouldn't say was great planning, but it took a lot of time. And then I spent, days, hours editing it, and then it really just was like, okay, now I think we know what we're doing. Let's actually get a guest on and do it. And thankfully, the first episode went off with almost without a hitch. I think we dropped the last like 30 seconds of the call, because we didn't explain to Carlton, the guest, to just hold on in the browser not hang up for about 30 seconds. But yeah.
All right. Are we at time?
I think so. Yeah. So saying that, I think for anyone that is still listening to our transitioning episode from part of season 1 to the second part, if you have any feedback, please definitely send it. But more importantly, if you have um, anyone you want to hear on the podcast, or you want to hear more of something, just send us a message. It should be easy to reach us. There should be plenty of contact details in the show notes. But yeah, if you've got guests, even if
Or
it's someone that you
topics,
don't know,
guests or topics.
guests,
Yeah.
questions for us to ask. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are you struggling with as an engineer that you want to know more? We can ask that to any of our guests as they come on. But yeah, we appreciate anyone that's listening to us, and we promise that things will get better as we go, as we do it more. And hopefully we can get into a routine of having an episode almost weekly for a period of time. Maybe have some breaks here and there. But yeah, so thank you for all those that took the time to listen to us so far, and keep an eye out for our start of part 2 coming out soon.
Thank you. Talk to you soon, James.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.